Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Atlanta's Movers and Shakers. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today, we are having a conversation with producer, director, and the Godfather storyboard artist, Mark Simon.
Hey, how
Mark,
you doing, Mandisa?
hello. Mark has storyboarded hit series such as Stranger Things, Dexter, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, FBI, The Walking Dead, and over 60 feature films such as Waterboy and Father of the Bride. Hello, Mark. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Always great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too. We gave you a brief bio, but could you
Mhm.
share a little bit more about who you are and what you do in the Atlanta film and TV community?
Sure. So I have been in the entertainment industry for over 35 years now. I started as an art director and production designer for a number of years out in Hollywood. I moved to Orlando when I got married, and my wife and I helped open up Nickelodeon. And in the years before that, before all the big issues that we're seeing in that documentary right now. So anyway, we helped open the studios. I left there as an art director to start working with Steven Spielberg, and that's when I started full time as a storyboard artist. That was like back in 1992, and I've actually never looked back. I've been full time storyboarding since then. I've directed quite a bit since then as well. I've owned a couple animation studios. Most of the storyboarding I do is live action, but I do jump back and forth between them. I've been an animation producer on 3 feature films for Fox and Universal. And during all of that, I've also produced all the courses on how to storyboard on LinkedIn Learning. I've written curriculums for 5 different universities. I've written 13 books. I tend to stay pretty busy. I host conferences. I speak at conferences around the world. I love talking about the industry and what we do, so I jump on it any chance I can, especially to share information about the cool thing that story artists do. I mean, not just what I do, but I'm friends with a lot of the world's top story artists. I actually put a group together, an informal group of the world's top story artists, so we could get to know each other. It's a very lonely existence, what I do. I very seldom leave what you see behind me here in my own studio. So it's so exciting to share stories with people who only deal with the things that the only other people who deal with the same things that I deal with. But I love everything about this industry. I really, truly do. And I've worked on over 6,000 productions now. So it's
Um,
been a ride.
Wow. You have a pretty cool studio. I'm looking at it in the background, and your shirt's pretty cool too. I like that shirt.
Fun.
So, can you take us on your journey of how you found your love of the arts to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. I've always been an artist. I've always known I wanted to be an artist. I've always known that I wanted to tell stories. I just didn't know what storyboards were when I was growing up. There were no books on it. I actually wrote the first book
Wow.
all about storyboarding in the industry um, because I didn't know about it.
Hmm.
My dad was an engineer and a musician. So, and then he started building homes. So I got my start in design and art, designing and illustrating very, very large custom homes. That's what we did when I was growing up. And I started designing all of our marketing and I would go to music lessons, but I would come home with cartoons drawn all over the sheet music. So they finally realized, my parents finally realized, well, maybe we're paying for the wrong kind of lessons. So then I started getting into art lessons, and about every 3 or 4 months, we'd find a new teacher so I could explore different types of art. I would perfect what this person taught, and then I'd move over to this person. And that was a lot of fun. And then probably the thing that led me inadvertently into working in Hollywood was actually getting severely bullied. It's a story I actually wrote about in my memoir called Attacked. Uh, my bullies actually tried to kill me, and they actually followed me home from a big attack one night and attacked my entire family in our front yard. And I became the first person in the country to hold parents responsible for the illegal actions of their kids.
Mm.
So uh, every once in a while, you'll see reports now, like with the Michigan school shooter, the case that happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where those parents were arrested. That's partially based on my court case. I set the precedent in the country for that. Uh, um, But because of what was happening there, and when we went through the trial, I pretty much lost my mind for a while. And I had been a straight A honor student, all the advanced classes. And during that, I failed one of my advanced math classes. And I was a competing mathlete. That was unusual. But when I failed that, because I was so far ahead in school, I didn't need to replace it with a class for credits. And I just thought, well, I'll just take another art class. And my art teacher said, look, the theater department needs someone to do illustrations, designs, brochures, and stuff for everything. Why don't you go down there? So I did. And I fell in love with theater. And I ended up being the backstage manager on my first stage play. And I did all the posters, all the designs, everything, and absolutely loved it and ended up getting a scholarship to college in theater. And when I went to my college, I became really good friends with the film professor who taught me a lot. In fact, I moved out to Los Angeles with his son. He and I split a place together. Uh, and I mean, and that's where my love of film. I mean, look, I always loved film, movies, and TV, but not what was behind it. You know, Star Wars sparked it because I was 13 when Star Wars came out. So I thought, oh, I would love to do something like this. But I never thought about a career moving out there until I was in college. And so right out of college, I mean, uh, I literally sold my house, and 2 weeks after I graduated, I was living in LA. And I started working at Roger Corman's studio, which he younger people may not recognize his name, but he was the king of B budget movies. And he's about a third of the industry in the 60s, 70s, and 80s got their start at Roger Corman's studio. I mean, Jim Cameron got his start there. Jack Nicholson got his start there. I mean, it's just amazing. Well, I did too. And that was really exciting. And that launched my career. I became an art director on my first movie that I worked on and just continued on up until, like I mentioned, when Steven Spielberg moved the Sequest series, a sci-fi series on NBC, to Orlando. And that's when I decided I wanted to move into storyboarding because I wanted to draw more and I wanted to tell direct stories. And so now it's a dream job. I get to draw every day. I don't have to worry about color because I don't like color. So I get to draw in black and white, tell stories, work on scripts, work with the top creative in the industry, and then see things on the big screen on the TV every day that I work on. I mean, come on, literally, how could I find something better to do?
Wow, that's an amazing, amazing journey. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so you kind of answered the second part of my next question. So I'm going to ask you the first part of the next question.
Okay.
For those who may not know, can you talk about what storyboarding is?
Sure. There's two different ways I look at it. In basic form, it's kind of like a comic book or comic strip version of a script. So if you read a script and I read a script, we're both going to have different images in our head.
Hmm.
But the only image that matters is the director's vision. So it's my job as a story artist to illustrate the director's vision so that all five, six, or 700 people on that shoot all are working towards that one singular vision. So it's kind of like if you're building a house and someone says, build me a 3 bedroom house. What you see in your head is going to be different than what I see. But the only thing that matters is the architect's vision, and the director is the architect. So I'm illustrating the blueprints for production to follow in order to create all these amazing stunts and effects and shots of these huge, huge productions in order for them to move efficiently, planned properly, knowing what they need to schedule, and everyone knowing what they need to work on next. So I was just out on location the other day. I was out there. I'm working with Kevin Bacon right now on a new series called The Bondsman, and I went out there because I really like the director, and there was a sequence that I'd storyboarded that is really cool, and and being there on set, it's so cool because they have these huge 4x8 sheets of foam core hanging with all my storyboards blown up really big. And as they get each shot, they check mark it off to make sure that before they leave that location, they have shot everything they need in order for editorial and for effects to do what they need to do to tell the story properly. And to be out there on location and see your art being used that way and on location is a real thrill. Even after all these years of doing this, I still get a charge out of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. You can I can feel your passion, your coming out in your interview and how you're answering your questions. Thank you for sharing that cuz I know I kind of knew what storyboarding was and I'm pretty sure there are other people that probably may or may not. But thank you for sharing that. Um
Absolutely.
we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back.
Guys, stop! Man! I'm supposed to get the money now. I told you. I always told you. I'm getting you back. Trust that. Trust it.
Welcome back to Conversations with Atlanta's Movers and Shakers. I am your host, Mandisa Johnson. Today we are having a conversation with producer, director, and the Godfather storyboard artist, Mark Simon. You wrote numerous books. Can you
Mhm.
share with us about some of those and how people who might be interested can purchase a copy?
Sure. So I've written a number of different things. Most of my books are nonfiction. A lot of books on the industry. Like I wrote the Bible of storyboarding called Storyboards, Motion, and Art. The third edition is the main one that's out there now. Uh, all my books are available on Amazon, or you can also go to marksimonbooks.com, and they're all there. And then there's links to Amazon under each one. One of the ones I'm known for most with artists is it's my evergreen bestseller that ever since it came out, it's been on the bestseller list. It's called Facial Expressions, and it's a photographic reference book for artists. And the reason that's important is this is what most artists use, and we look at ourselves, and we're drawing ourselves all the time. But if I'm drawing you, I don't want to look at this mug. I'd rather look at you, right? So artists usually only have our own faces to draw from. So my book, I took 50 different models of all ages, all nationalities, all skin tones, holding a variety of expressions, but I photographed them all around their head, high angle, low angle, from every angle. Because if you got someone screaming, well, if the camera's supposed to be here, what does that look like? Well, you can find it. Or if there's a low camera angle looking up at someone, you can find those. And there's also photos of phonemes, which is the mouth shape for animators to be able to use. I've got galleries of people wearing hats. Like, what does a baseball cap or a cowboy hat look like from all different angles? All of that is there in this book. So every artist, regardless of what they do, it's animators, caricature artists, fine artists, painters, whatever, everyone uses this book. And there's actually 3 different editions of it that are out there. Most recently, during the pandemic, I sat down to finish writing my memoir, Attacked, which I mentioned, which is all about my story of being attacked and holding the gang and their parents responsible for it. I had written it a few times. I was never happy. But during the pandemic, all production ceased. So I actually had time to really work it. And now it's actually really exciting. It took a while to figure out how to tell it. So because there's so much backstory that you have to know to really understand why it happened the way it did. Until a friend of mine said, "Well, you work on movies. Just pretend it's a movie. Tell it in that exciting way." And I thought, why didn't I think of that? So so that's out. And then the other one, which came out as my kids were graduating college, I wrote a book called Start at the Top. Because most of my career, I've never really worked my way up. When I have an idea for something, I generally jump right to the top of whatever it is. I mean, my first professional animation gig was animating Tinkerbell for Disney. Um, the first time I designed a training program, I ended up selling it to the founder of Keller Williams Realty, which became the biggest real estate company in the world. With art directing in Hollywood, I became an art director in my very first movie. My first storyboarding series was working with Steven Spielberg. I mean, and it just goes on and on. So what I did is I wrote a book on how I was able to do that over and over in all these different areas to inspire my kids. And it's not just the stories, because they know the stories. They grew up hearing them. But I end each chapter with what I learned from the experience. Hopefully they can use. At the same point, it didn't always work, because with my kind of personality, I push and push and push, and sometimes they are spectacular failures. And there's a whole there's a whole chapter on what I call F ups in the book. So if you're ever interested in what did Mark try that he just blew up in a blaze of glory, oh, it's there. And those were actually fun to write once I got the nerve to write it. Those weren't easy things to admit to, but once I got into it, it was fun.
Wow, that sounds like that would be like a good graduation gift for a high schooler.
I would hope so. I mean, that's literally the purpose. I mean, I wrote it for my sons. So,
Right. So it leads me to my next question. What
okay.
is a piece of advice for a high schooler looking to pursue a career in storyboarding?
Yeah, I love that question. First thing to do is study filmmaking. Um, as a story artist, I have to understand directing and editing and how visual effects are done, because we're helping determine how visual effects are done. And when, we work with the director and the director of photography, and one or the other will say, well, we're going to use a crane for this shot. I'm going to throw a long lens for this. Well, what does a long lens mean? How is that different from a short lens or a wide angle? And how is that going to change the image on what we're showing? You need to understand all of that, because they're telling you things in their lingo that you need to illustrate. And studying film doesn't necessarily mean going to film school. It means turning off the sound and watching all different types of movies and TV shows. And the reason I say that is, if the sound is on and it's a good project, you're not going to pay attention to the shots. You're going to get wrapped up in it. But with the sound off, you can really study the visuals. And if you can still follow the story without the audio, it's beautifully directed. Um, and uh, as an artist, especially if you want to get into live action storyboarding, do a lot of life drawing. You need to be able to draw anything quickly. You really need to understand perspective, because you're going to be drawing from every angle. Camera up high, looking down. How is that going to be different than a low angle looking up? And if you want to get to animated storyboards, you really need to be able to draw in any style that matches the look of an existing show. So, as an artist, regardless of your age, your portfolio needs to show a lot of different styles. Do a quick little storyboard that looks like Family Guy. Do a storyboard that looks like South Park. Do a storyboard that looks like anything that you do. The problem is, so many young people now, it's all anime style, but very little anime is storyboarded here in the US. So you need to match the styles of everything else. So you have to have a broad portfolio, or you will not be hired. The one other thing is, you really need to learn the software Storyboard Pro. That is the main software in the industry that is used both for live action and animation. Uh, every animation project pretty much around the world uses it. More and more live action, and I helped develop the software, so I really know it. It's one of the reasons I highlight it, is because it is amazing and it saves me a tremendous amount of time. But it's also the pipeline that you're going to have to work in. So I highly recommend learning that as well.
Thank you for sharing that, because we like to try to get high schoolers to think, because we live in downtown Decatur, so there's a lot filming in the area.
Sure.
So I'm just like thinking, what a better way to learn more about the careers that are happening around you than your typical um, careers.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So we like to share gems with our
Mhm.
readers, viewers. GEM stands for Great Educational Moments with Movers and Shakers. Do you have any gems you would like to share?
I do. There's one that I've been sharing for years because it's worked so well for me, and I have seen it work 100% of the time, and that is get involved. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of really great associations and groups like Women in Film and Television, WIFTA, which is based here in Atlanta. There's women in film in all different cities. In Atlanta, it's WIFTA, Women in Film and Television Atlanta. It's probably the strongest association of movers and shakers, just an amazing organization. There's GPP, Georgia Production Partnership. There's VES, which is the Visual Effects Society. There's ASIFA, which is a French word, or it stands for a bunch of French words that no one really knows what the hell it means, but it's all about animation. Get involved. And getting involved does not mean just joining and being a wallflower in the back or saying, well, I'll go to the next one. That's not getting involved. Getting involved means reaching out to the people who run it, who virtually all the time are the movers and shakers in the industry. These are the people that you need to get to know and volunteer. Offer your time. And if you want to make the most of it, help them with their big events on putting it together, because these people who are always working, when they need to hire somebody, people hire those that they know and like. And if you are doing a great job as a volunteer and they need someone, you're going to be the first one they think of, because if you're getting paid, you're going to do even a better job than how you did if you were for free. Now, that means you have to be good, you have to show up, you have to be responsible and have a great attitude. But that should be a given, but I had to at least mention that. And the best thing that you can do for yourself when you're volunteering, especially for like the monthly meetings and things like that, when it's an in-person event, is offer to work the sign-in table. And this is one of the hidden secrets. At the sign-in table, you meet everybody, right? And your job is over when the event begins. So that means you now know who you want to talk to, and you have time. So you can walk in and walk up to any of these people that you just met at the sign-in table, say, so what are you up to now? And just start a conversation. Getting to know people and being involved is how you get hired and move up in the industry.
Thank you for sharing that. My husband and I were just talking about that along the same lines as what you just said.
Yeah, I heard you. I saw you nodding. That. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've had people, because we host events, that have emailed me, well, can I be a panelist? And I'm just like, I don't really know. Yeah, we follow each other on Instagram, but come to our networking event. Let me see what you have to offer beforehand.
Sure.
Because I feel like we've been building something for so long. I just can't let anybody.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
your reputation as well.
right, right. So, do you have anything else you would like to share?
Um, the nice thing, it's great that with the strikes over, people are getting back to work. It has been slow for a lot of people, but hang in there. It is picking up. I'm currently working on two different series. The Bondsman series I mentioned with Kevin Bacon. I'm also working on the Netflix series You, about the serial killer. That's really fun. Um, so I'm seeing more and more production coming starting up again, and it's looking like the IATSE negotiations, because our contract is up at the end of July this year. That's coming along very well. The press has been stating that most things that IATSE, the main membership, has already been approved with the studios. So it looks like we're going to be averting a strike. So that means that the studios are going to be willing to start up even more productions. So it's great. So if you've been struggling and hanging on, it's only getting better right now. I'm seeing it personally, and everything in the press is showing that it's going to get better and better as we go. And just as a person who's literally my entire adult life has worked in the industry, it is glorious. It really is fun.
Thank you. So, how can people connect with you?
The easiest way for me, I only use one social networking, and that's LinkedIn, because I actually get a lot of work through LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, so just look up Mark Simon, and if you need to put anything else, put in storyboards. I pop right up. I'm probably one of the easiest people in the world to find. Even at Google, I pop up on top. So
And that is good.
Yeah. LinkedIn is easy. If you want to see samples of my storyboarding work, it's storyboards-east.com. Everything is there. And of course, all my books, as I mentioned, marksimonbooks.com.
Thank you. Thank you for answering a few questions. And thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and on Instagram at Atlanta Film and TV. Until then, I'm Mandisa Johnson. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone.